It's funny how you can feel something falling apart before you ever see the cracks. Like an instinct that hums low in your chest. For me, it started weeks before the party. Maybe even months. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself she was just tired. Work had been stressful. Life had been loud. We'd drifted before and found our way back. That's what I kept saying until I stopped believing it. Lauren used to fill a room without trying. Her laugh, loud and a little offbeat, used to echo through our house. I used to love that laugh. Now it felt like a distant memory, and when I heard it lately, it wasn't for me. At least not anymore. So when she mentioned Jason's party, last minute like it was barely worth noting, I smiled, nodded, said something like, "Sounds fun." She kissed my cheek and said she'd be back before midnight. She didn't ask me to come. Didn't even hesitate when I didn't offer. And maybe that should have been the moment. Maybe that should have been the sign. But I still wanted to trust her. Still wanted to be the guy who believed in his marriage. The fool, some might say. Jason had always been in the background. A name she'd mention in passing, with a tone that tried too hard to be casual. A work friend from her last company. The kind of guy who always seemed to pop up when things weren't great between us. I'd asked about him once, months ago. After seeing his name flash across her phone at 11:47 p.m. She'd laughed, said I was being insecure, said it was about a project they'd both worked on ages ago, that I was reading into things. And I believed her. Or at least I forced myself to. That night, after she left, I sat on the couch, remote in hand, TV on but volume muted. I stared at the screen, not watching anything. Just thinking too much. Her perfume still lingered in the hallway. A sharp, expensive scent she'd bought recently. Said she needed something new for the new year. I hadn't noticed it on her before, but I could smell it tonight, as if she'd bathed in it. I should have stayed home, but I didn't. Something in me, maybe pride, maybe something more primitive, wouldn't let me sit still. I needed to see, not to catch her, not to confront her, just to know. So I drove. Jason's place wasn't far. A renovated loft on the edge of the city. Industrial. Stylish. Just trendy enough to make someone like him feel important. I parked a block away and walked the rest. I could hear the music before I even reached the door. That thumping bass that makes your chest vibrate. People spilled onto the sidewalk, laughing and smoking, their breath fogging in the cold December air. I almost turned back, but I didn't. Inside, the party was everything I expected. Low lighting, loud conversations, too much alcohol. I scanned the crowd and found her quickly. Of course I did. Lauren was always easy to spot, especially when she wanted to be seen. She was standing in the center of a group, laughing in that too high pitch she used when she wanted to seem carefree. She wore a red velvet dress, tight at the waist, dipping low at the back. One I'd never seen before. Her hair was pinned up, strands falling loose like she hadn't tried, which meant she tried. A lot. She looked good. She looked radiant. And Jason, he was right next to her. He leaned in close when he talked. Too close. His hand rested just at the curve of her back, fingers barely moving. It was subtle, casual enough for someone who didn't know them. But I knew. That wasn't a first-time touch. Their glasses clinked. She laughed. He said something that made her cover her mouth and lean into him. And for a second, just 1 second, she looked up and saw me. Everything changed. Her body stiffened. The smile froze. She straightened, her posture going rigid, like a student caught passing notes in class. Then, just as quickly, she smoothed it over, rolled her eyes, whispered something to Jason. He glanced at me, smirked. That smirk stayed with me. She walked over, slowly, like I was the one being unreasonable for showing up. "You're here?" she asked, eyes wide with fake surprise. "Didn't think you'd mind," I said. She paused, then forced a smile. "I just didn't expect you to come. You said you weren't feeling great." "I never said that." She shrugged. "Maybe I imagined it." Jason was still watching from the other side of the room. He didn't look away when I met his eyes. "I didn't want to make things weird," she added. brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You've seemed tense lately. Tense. That was her word for it. You look nice, I said. I wasn't trying to compliment her. I just needed to say something to break the silence. Thanks. She looked down at her drink, then back at me. You could have called. You could have invited me. She didn't answer. That's when I knew. I reached into my coat pocket and touched the edge of the letter. Folded neatly. Written last week. I'd gone through a few drafts. None of them said everything I wanted. But this one was enough. I didn't come to fight. I came to leave. Lauren turned back toward the party, her eyes scanning the room, her hand tightening on the stem of her glass. You're overreacting, she said. It's a party. Jason and I are friends. That's all. I never said otherwise. You're jealous, she said quietly. You've always been jealous. Maybe, maybe not. But jealousy wasn't what I felt when I saw the way she looked at him. Not when she thought I was watching, but before. That was the part that stuck with me. It wasn't the touch. It wasn't even the smirk. It was the way she lit up when Jason leaned in. Like a switch flipped on. Like she'd been waiting for him. There's a kind of truth people reveal when they think you're not watching. In that moment, her face told me everything her words never had. This wasn't new. I handed her the car keys. You can drive home, I said. If you want. She blinked. What? Wait, what are you talking about? I'm leaving. Seriously? She scoffed. You show up uninvited. Act like some jealous ex, and now you're storming off like I'm the villain? I didn't answer, because I wasn't storming off. I was letting go. That's when her voice dropped. So that's it. I met her eyes. No, that was it a long time ago. She didn't follow me when I left. Didn't call my name. Didn't even pretend to care who saw. She turned back to Jason, and when she did, she smiled. And just like that, I knew I was making the right choice. When I left Jason's place, I didn't drive far. Just down the road, to a parking lot behind an all-night diner. I sat there, engine off, headlights fading into the frost. Inside, people were laughing over pancakes, clinking coffee mugs. Out here, the silence hit harder. The letter was still in my coat pocket. I didn't take it out. I didn't need to. I knew every word. I'd rewritten it enough times. I thought about how long I'd seen it coming. How long I'd pretended not to. There were signs. Dozens. They'd stacked themselves quietly, like bricks building a wall I'd chosen to ignore. Like when she stopped laughing at my jokes. Not because they weren't funny, but because she'd stopped listening. When I'd walk into the room, and she'd glance up from her phone just long enough to offer a polite smile before going right back to it. Always typing. Always swiping. Always distant. One night a few months ago, I saw a message on her phone. It flashed briefly while she reached for the charger. Jay. Made me laugh again today. She closed it before I could say anything. Said it was an inside joke from work. He's harmless, she said. I believed her, because I wanted to. And then there was the girls' night she didn't want to talk about. The one where she wore heels she hadn't touched in a year. The perfume I used to love. The same one she had on at Jason's party. I remember asking her where they went. She shrugged. Said somewhere downtown. Just drinks and dancing. Nothing wild. But when I checked her stories, nothing. No group photos. No tags. No laughter in the background. Just one curated boomerang of a wine glass clinking against. No one else's. I remember the way she said, "You're so paranoid," when I asked about it. But I wasn't. I was just seeing it too late. She'd started coming home later. Said she was staying to help with training, or catching up on admin stuff. Some nights, she came in quiet. Shoes in hand. Makeup faded, eyes tired. Not tired from work. A different kind of tired. The kind that comes from lying. From sneaking. From trying to keep a story straight. The worst part? I never asked. I stopped asking. Because deep down I already knew. And knowing meant doing something. Saying something. But I wasn't ready. So I made myself blind. I started keeping a tally in my head. Not of the lies, but of the absences. The mornings she'd leave early without saying goodbye. The dinners she'd skip with a vague, had something at work. The conversations that turned into monologues I gave to myself. Her laptop started closing faster when I walked into the room. Notifications turned off. Messages cleared. Password changed. Work privacy, she said. HR stuff. Nothing personal. And maybe that was true for a while. Maybe it didn't start as anything. Maybe it was just emotional. First. But the distance? That wasn't in my imagination. Even in bed, she turned away. Said she was tired. That she couldn't sleep unless it was cold and quiet and still. So I learned to stop reaching for her. I became still. I became quiet. And in the silence, I became someone else. Someone who didn't ask to be loved, just tolerated. I convinced myself it was temporary. A phase. A hard season. Everyone goes through rough patches, right? But this wasn't a patch. It was a slow erasure. I think the moment that broke me came a week before the party. I'd made dinner, nothing fancy, just something warm. We hadn't sat down together in a while, and I missed the sound of her voice when she talked about things that excited her. She came home, saw the table set, and didn't even smile. "What's the occasion?" she asked, her voice flat. "No occasion," I said. "Just us." She sighed. "You didn't have to do all this." "I wanted to." She poked at the food, barely touched it. Halfway through, her phone buzzed. I saw the way her eyes lit up when she looked at the screen. She smiled, just slightly, the kind of smile that used to be mine. She turned the phone face down and said she had to get back to emails. I cleared the plates alone. I should have said something. Should have asked who she was smiling for. But I didn't, because I already knew. And what would be the point? What could I possibly say that would compete with the way she looked when she smiled at her phone? That's when I started packing. Not obviously. Not dramatically. Just small things at first. Clothes I didn't wear often. Old photos. Favorite hoodie. Stuff I could live without for a week or two. Just in case. And then came the letter. I wrote it one night in the garage. Handwritten. 2 pages. Not angry. Not pleading. Just honest. It wasn't a goodbye letter. It was a mirror. A reflection of everything I'd noticed. Everything I'd swallowed. Everything I couldn't unsee anymore. I wrote, "I know I've become someone you don't see anymore. I know there's someone else taking up space in the parts of you that used to be mine. And I don't hate you for it. I just can't be the guy who keeps pretending this is normal." I never planned to use it. Not really. I kept thinking maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just in my head. Maybe if we just had one good night, one honest talk, we could reset. But every night after that, I found new proof in her distance. New absences. New moments when her eyes were full of someone else's reflection. At the party, it all came together. The way she looked at Jason. The way she froze when she saw me. The way she rolled her eyes like I was a child. That wasn't shock. That wasn't embarrassment. That was fear. Not fear of me. Fear that I'd finally caught up. That I was no longer behind the lie, but beside it. All the signs had been there. The only mystery was why I ignored them for so long. But sitting in that parking lot, listening to the hum of the world without her in it, I finally understood. I hadn't been staying for her. I'd been staying for the version of her I remembered. And she was already gone. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in a motel off the highway, the kind of place where the vending machine flickers and the ice machine growls every hour like it's choking on regret. I sat by the window, half watching the parking lot, half replaying the scene from the party over and over again. Her laugh, his hand, that flicker of panic when she saw me. I thought maybe a few hours would soften it, that I'd wake up the next morning and feel silly for thinking what I was thinking. But that didn't happen. I woke up more certain. Still, certainty and closure aren't the same thing. And I needed both. Around 6 a.m., I got a voice message from Lauren. She was drunk. That was obvious from the start. Her words slow, slurred, emotions bleeding into every sentence like spilled wine on a white rug. "Hey, I didn't expect you to show up. I mean, I wasn't ready for that. You don't get it, do you?" She laughed, but there was no joy in it. Jason wasn't supposed to show that. He said he wouldn't. God, I didn't know he was going to, whatever. You just. Click. That was it. 17 seconds. But it was everything. He wasn't supposed to show that. That one line unraveled months of doubt. I didn't even know what that was yet. A photo? A video? A message? But it didn't matter. It existed. And it was never meant for my eyes. I sat there in the motel bed, phone still in my hand, pulse in my ears, knowing two things. Jason had something. She wasn't sorry he had it. She was sorry I saw it. It wasn't guilt. It was damage control. That was the real betrayal. And still, I needed proof. Not for her. For myself. I needed something that would silence the tiny, exhausted voice in my head still whispering, maybe it's all in your head. So I made a call. To an old friend of mine. Evan. A guy I hadn't talked to in nearly 2 years. Not since he moved to Colorado to start some cybersecurity firm. We weren't exactly close anymore, but back in the day, he was the one who'd jailbreak a phone for fun, who could recover files from a corrupted drive like it was nothing. I didn't say much, just told him the truth, more or less. That I thought my wife was hiding something on an old account. That I didn't know if I was crazy or right, and either way, I needed to know which. He didn't ask questions. Just told me to send him whatever I could. Login info, devices, backups. I'll see what I can dig up, he said. But fair warning. Most people don't like what they find. A few hours later, he called back. I found something, he said. A few things, actually. You sure you want me to send them? Send them. I opened the files alone, sitting in the front seat of my car parked beneath a tree near an empty playground. I watched the wind push the swing sets gently, like ghosts still playing where no one remembered them. Felt right. The first thing was a photo, taken almost exactly 1 year ago. Lauren. Same red velvet dress from the party. Same earrings. Same exact hairstyle. But the background was different. It wasn't a party. It was Jason's living room. You could see the stupid vinyl record player he used to brag about. The one Lauren once said made him weirdly charming. She was sitting on his couch, one leg folded under her, holding a wine glass, her free hand resting lightly on his knee. Not beside it. On it. He wasn't looking at the camera, he was looking at her, his expression lazy, like he was used to her being there. The timestamp was from New Year's Eve. Last year. I stared at that photo for a long time. You tell yourself it's one thing. A single night. A lapse in judgment. A flirtation that went too far. But this wasn't impulsive. This was annual. There were other files. Snippets of audio, probably from saved voice messages. One of them was just her voice, soft and tired. I feel numb when I'm home. He doesn't even notice me anymore. But with Jason, I don't know. At least I feel something. She said my name once in that message. Flat, dull. Like a name in a list she was reading for work. I listened to it twice, then a third time just to make sure I heard it right. Peaceful but lifeless. That's how she described me. As if I were a place. A museum she used to enjoy but now just wandered through out of habit. It wasn't anger I felt. Not then. It was recognition. Like finding a painting you didn't realize you'd already seen before. A feeling you couldn't name until someone else did it for you. She checked out a long time ago. And the worst part? I had tried so hard to keep her happy that I forgot to ask if she even wanted to be here. I closed my phone and sat in that car for what felt like hours. People came and went. Kids screamed in the distance. Someone walked by with a dog that barked at my bumper. And I just sat there. Because now it wasn't just suspicion. It wasn't intuition. It wasn't insecurity. It was fact. The photo. The voice message. The timeline. The expression on her face when Jason looked at her like she belonged to him. I'd been holding on to something that no longer existed. Not in the way I thought it did. Our marriage hadn't been sabotaged by one night. It had been eroded over time. Quietly. Without confrontation. Without cruelty. Just absence. Just slow, consistent neglect. And in that space something else grew. Someone else. Jason wasn't the wedge. He was the replacement. He was there when I wasn't, emotionally, physically, whatever she needed. And now? Now she was terrified I'd seen behind the curtain. Not because she wanted to keep loving me, but because she didn't want to look like the villain. She wanted to be justified. But there's no clean way to rewrite betrayal. You can't retroactively frame it as bravery. You can't lie your way into being the victim. And you can't call it nothing when there's a photo that says otherwise. So I deleted the message from Lauren. The one where she stammered and giggled and said she didn't know Jason would show that. Because I didn't need it anymore. I had everything I needed. What you do after truth arrives, that's where the story really begins. I didn't tell her I was leaving. I didn't scream, didn't slam a door, didn't throw the letter at her feet or read her the texts she thought she'd erased forever. I just drove, quietly, deliberately, like someone late for a meeting they didn't want to attend. I headed north, no destination at first. Just away. Away from our house, away from her silence, away from the version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. After a few hours on the road, I remembered the cabin. My grandfather's old place in Maine. We talked about going there together one summer. That one we kept saying would be just for us. Never made it. Life got in the way. Or maybe we let it. She always said she didn't like the woods. Too quiet. Too far from Wi-Fi. Now that's what I craved most. Distance and silence. No texts, no tracking, no pretending. When I arrived, the cabin looked smaller than I remembered. The shutters were loose. A tree limb had fallen across the driveway, half buried in snow. It didn't matter. I wasn't here to escape the world. I was here to face it without the noise. Inside, it smelled like old cedar and dust. The floor creaked with every step. The wood stove still worked, and I found a stack of firewood behind the shed. I got the fire going and unpacked what little I brought. A duffel bag, my coat, the letter. That was it. I didn't touch my phone for hours. When I finally did, I saw the first text from her. "Where are you? I'm worried." Then another, "Are you okay? Please say something." I didn't respond. An hour later, "This isn't fair. We need to talk." And then, "You're blowing this out of proportion. It's just a photo. From forever ago. Why are you acting like IK** led someone?" There it was. The pivot. From concern to blame. From soft to sharp. The kind of message that's not really about the truth, it's about controlling the reaction. I didn't reply to that one either. She didn't know I'd seen the voice message. Didn't know I'd heard her say that being with me was peaceful but lifeless. Didn't know about the timestamp on the photo, proving it wasn't some distant memory but a recent secret. But even if she had known, would it have mattered? Her messages weren't about what she'd done. They were about what I was doing now. I was breaking the rhythm. I was supposed to argue, to beg, to accuse. That's the pattern she could handle. But I didn't do any of that. I just left. And that scared her more than any fight could. Because if I wasn't yelling, it meant I'd made peace with the truth. And once you make peace with it, you don't go back. That night, I sat by the fire for hours, wrapped in an old flannel blanket, listening to the wind claw at the shutters. The quiet wasn't comforting. Not yet. But it was honest. I read my own letter again. You can lie to me, but I won't lie to myself. Not anymore. Felt different now. Like a message from someone I used to be. A man trying to hold on. Now, I didn't feel like I was holding anything anymore. Just letting go. The next morning, I chopped wood with bare hands until the blisters bled through. My body ached. My shoulders screamed. But it felt good to feel something physical. Something that wasn't guilt or confusion or that quiet hum of humiliation. There was peace in that kind of pain. Her texts kept coming. "Please, can we talk? I'll explain everything. You're being cold. You're scaring me." But still no apology. No real one. No admission. Just panic. Just fear that I was no longer playing my part. Eventually, the text slowed. Then stopped. I didn't miss them. The silence, as raw as it was, felt better than the noise of her spinning stories. I cooked simple meals. Eggs. Canned soup. I slept under heavy blankets. I sat on the porch and listened to the snow melt off the roof. I wrote down thoughts I didn't want to say out loud. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't sad, but crying felt like grief. And what I felt wasn't the loss of a person. It was the loss of a version of myself that kept making excuses for someone who stopped choosing me. I used to think love was what you give no matter what. Now I know it's also what you protect. And I was finally protecting mine. On the third day, I woke up to a noise outside. A car. Tires crunching over snow. I looked out the window and saw her. Lauren. Alone. She stepped out wearing a thin jacket, arms crossed tightly. Her eyes scanning the cabin like she wasn't sure if she'd find me inside or just the version of me she left behind. She knocked once. Hesitated. Then again. I opened the door but didn't say anything. Her lips parted like she'd practiced a speech, but the cold cut through it. Her breath fogged between us. "You're really here," she said, as if that meant something. I stepped aside. Let her in. Not because I wanted to hear her out, but because I wanted to see what version of the truth she'd bring with her. She stood near the fire, arms shaking, eyes red. Maybe from tears. Maybe from the wind. "I didn't think you'd actually go," she whispered. "You didn't think I'd leave," I corrected. She swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to hurt you. You just didn't mean to get caught." Silence. She didn't argue. Just looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers the way she always did when she was nervous. "Nothing happened that night," she said finally. "At the party. It wasn't like that." I nodded slowly. "You wore the same dress." "What?" "The dress. From the photo. The one in Jason's apartment. You wore it again. That wasn't an accident." Her face changed subtly but enough. A flicker of awareness. Of recognition. She knew I'd seen it. "I didn't know he kept that photo," she said too fast. "It's old. It didn't mean anything." "But in your voice message," I said quietly, "you didn't call it old. You called it something he wasn't supposed to show." She froze. That was it. The mask falling. No yelling. No accusations. No denials. Just the air getting heavier between us. "You went looking for this?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't have to. You left pieces everywhere. I just stopped pretending they didn't fit." She sat on the edge of the couch like her legs gave out. "I didn't want this to happen," she said. "I was lonely. I was confused." Jason just filled the silence. I didn't respond. I just stared at the fire, because she wasn't denying it anymore. She was just afraid it mattered. She wanted a loophole, but there wasn't one. The truth didn't need my permission to exist. And now it was sitting between us, taking up all the space where love used to live. She didn't speak right away. Not after that. Not after I said what needed to be said. The fire crackled between us like punctuation, filling the silence she was too scared to break. Outside, the wind kicked through the trees, whistling against the old windows like it wanted to be let in. But inside, the storm was already happening. I stayed standing. She sat curled forward on the couch, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold something in, her composure, maybe, or a version of herself that no longer fit in the story she'd written. "I don't know why I came here," she finally whispered. I didn't answer. I wasn't going to do the emotional heavy lifting anymore. I wasn't going to coax out apologies or offer her the kind of grace she hadn't earned. If she wanted to talk, she'd have to find her own words. After a while, she did. "I wanted to fix it," she said. "Or, I wanted to try. I thought maybe if you saw me cry or, I don't know, if you saw that I cared, it would mean something." I looked at her then. Not the way I used to, when I'd search her face for signs of love or truth. I looked at her like a stranger who just walked into a story they didn't understand. "You don't get it," I said quietly. "This isn't about whether you care. It's about when you didn't." Her eyes welled. "I know I hurt you. You didn't just hurt me, Lauren. You rewrote us without telling me. You took our life, everything we built, and started editing it in secret. And now that the red ink is showing, you're crying because I finally read the footnotes." She wiped her face, sniffed hard. "It didn't start the way you think it did." I laughed under my breath. Not because it was funny, but because that sentence was the most predictable thing she could have said. It never does, I said. Right? She bit her lip, then nodded. I didn't plan for it. I swear I didn't. I just started talking to him again. Just talking. After I left that company, I felt like I lost something. He understood what I was going through. At first it was harmless. And then, she hesitated. Then I stopped telling you about it. That was the closest she'd come to honesty all night. It didn't make things better. But it was real. I felt seen, she said, her voice soft now. That's the part one didn't want to admit. Jason looked at me like I mattered. Like I wasn't invisible. I nodded slowly, letting it settle. You were never invisible to me, Lauren. You just stopped standing where I could see you. She flinched a little but didn't argue. I tried. I added. You think I didn't notice you pulling away? You think I didn't feel it when the conversations died, when the affection faded, when your phone became your real partner? I didn't know how to stop it. But you knew how to hide it. That landed. She looked down at her lap like she was ashamed, or maybe just tired. I think I was both. I listened to the voice message, I said finally. The one you left the night of the party. You said Jason wasn't supposed to show that. So let's stop pretending you were surprised. You weren't scared that I saw a photo. You were scared I saw the truth. She closed her eyes. I didn't know what else to do. You could have told me, I said. You could have told me before it got this far. Before it became something you couldn't contain. Her voice cracked. It already was something. That's what I didn't want to admit. Even when nothing physical had happened yet, it already was something. I didn't need her to say more. The most painful betrayals are the quiet ones. The ones that grow between the lines. Where words aren't spoken but loyalties shift. You feel it long before you can prove it. It sits with you heavy, unspoken. And by the time it surfaces, the damage is already done. She looked around the cabin like she was seeing it for the first time. You always talked about coming here, she said. I never thought you'd actually go without me. I never thought I'd need to. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. And I just watched her cry. No part of me wanted to rush to her side. No urge to comfort, no desire to pretend we could climb back from this. Because this wasn't a crack. This was a break. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Do you still love me? The question didn't surprise me. It wasn't the first time she tried to use it, as a test, a trap, a way back in. But something in me had changed. I looked at her, really looked, and I said, I think I stopped loving the version of you that's sitting in front of me. The real question is, when did you stop loving me? She didn't answer. That silence was louder than any confession. I reached into the bag behind me and pulled out the envelope I'd brought. It was thick. I'd added more pages the night before, after I found the voice recordings. It didn't just contain the letter now. Contained the ending. Divorce papers. Signed. Not with bitterness. Just with finality. I placed the envelope on the table in front of her. You don't have to open it now, I said. But I think you already know what it is. She stared at it for a long time. When she finally reached for it, her hand shook. She turned it over, her fingers tracing the edges like she could somehow soften it just by touching it gently. I didn't expect this, she whispered. I did, I replied. That's why it's here. Tears streamed freely now. She opened the envelope, scanned the pages. Her lip trembled. How long have you been planning this? Since I realized you weren't planning to stop. She let out a shuddered breath. I don't know who I am anymore. You're someone who needs something I can't give. And that's okay. But I'm someone who deserves to know when it changes. She closed the envelope, hugged it to her chest like it was something warm. But it wasn't. It was paper. Cold. Final. Real. I hate that I did this, she said. I know. I never meant for it to get this far. I know that too. And now. I took a long breath, exhaled slow. Now you go, I said. And I stay. She blinked. You're not coming back? I shook my head. There's nothing left to come back to. Her lip trembled. I thought you'd be angry. I was. But not anymore. Now I'm just done. She looked around one last time. Maybe hoping the walls would speak for her. Maybe hoping the universe would offer a last-minute rewrite. But the truth? The truth doesn't edit itself. It shows up. It stares you in the face. And it waits. "I'll go," she said finally, voice hollow. She stood slowly, like her legs weren't used to carrying this version of herself. At the door, she looked back. One more time, like she wanted to say something, something that would matter. But no words came. She stepped into the cold, into the snow. And I didn't shut the door behind her. I didn't chase her. I didn't shout after the car as it pulled away. I just stood there, holding the silence she'd once been afraid of. I wasn't angry anymore, just finished. When she was gone, I sat by the fire and stared at the envelope she left behind on the table. Unopened. Typical. She didn't want to read the truth if she didn't get to write it. But for once, I didn't carry her burden. I didn't try to explain, soothe, or fix. I let the weight fall where it belonged. She chose Jason. She chose silence. She chose everything but honesty, and now she could choose how to live with it. I didn't close the door behind her. I left it open, the cold rushing in like a final breath. It wasn't about dramatic endings or closure. It was about stepping out of something false and into something real. I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt clear, free, like I'd finally taken back the parts of me I gave away too quietly. This wasn't a story of revenge or rage. It was a story of return, to myself, my dignity, and the quiet strength of walking away without needing to be heard.